is Lauren Windas, if you don't know that already. I am a qualified nutritional therapist and naturopath, and I'm also co-founder of ARDERE. I wanted to start this video just to basically discuss a little bit about my journey, and a few people have been asking me about my experience with ME and essentially what I've done in order to help manage that through changes that I've made with my diet and lifestyle. So I just really wanted to kind of share that experience with you, and I thought the best way to do it would be just to create a video. So with me, everything started about 5 years ago now, and it's scary to think that that was actually 5 years ago that I've been on this crazy journey. And essentially it all started with a viral infection in 2012. I think it was whilst I was in my second year at university, followed by a strange panic attack, which I've never ever had panic attacks or anything like that previously in the past, but this surreal kind of feeling came over me, and this all happened within 1 week. So it essentially started off, I remember it was kind of like something just snapped within me, and I just felt overwhelming anxiety, and I'd never ever felt like that before. And that's when I think I had the viral infection. And from that period I had a stressful life event, and my health just went into a spiral of decline basically. And I remember that specific week, which was my first week back at university, when I actually started to become unwell. And strange kind of symptoms started to occur, and it was really, really surreal for me. The symptoms essentially were a really severe brain fog, which is a really, really hard symptom to describe, and you can explain it to people but they still won't get it. But it's essentially where you feel like hungover basically, and you'll feel hungover for days and days and days on end. For me, it lasted a period of 2 years chronically before I actually started to see any shift in that. And it's a really, really hard symptom to describe in the terms of how it affects you, because it really made me feel so tired. And following this viral infection, I just felt like I'd been hit by a bus essentially. My muscles started to ache. Every time I was getting out of bed, I just felt like I'd run a marathon the day before when I'd not even been to the gym. And I was just really, really overwhelmed with fatigue, and I was studying English literature at the time, and really, really, really struggled to actually get through my degree just because it made reading really, really difficult. And it was a strange symptom, and I was going to the doctors, obviously kind of recording all this and mentioning everything to my GPs, and you know, they did the best that they could. They looked at all the blood tests that they could have done for me. They tested me for glandular fever, things like Lyme's disease, and everything came back normal, which was good in the sense that I didn't receive those type of diagnoses, but actually I still didn't know what was wrong with me. And I think that was the hardest part, because it took me a long, long time to kind of get answers, and I was going back and forth to the doctors trying to figure out, you know, what was actually going on. And you know, it was a really difficult time just because I didn't understand why my health was in such a state. And luckily my mum has always had an interest in nutrition, so she shed light on an alternative approach. So we kind of looked into the alternative field, and I didn't really know much about it at all, and I didn't really have the slightest care about, you know, the foods that I was really putting into my body. You know, I wasn't really in tune with what I was eating and how it actually made me feel. But it's actually going down this route, I've learned so much. So essentially we found a naturopath in New Zealand, and we used to Skype him. You know, I'd Skype him every month, or as and when I needed, basically, to kind of look at actually what was going on with me. And there's lots of things that you can do in the alternative medical field, where you can look at tests and, you know, parasitology. You can do stool analysis and things like that. And essentially the route I went down was just by looking at my gut function, and I realised just how important it was to kind of look at, you know, what I was eating, and looking at the state of my gut basically, because a lot of my issues were stemming from there, and I could tell that I really didn't have a healthy gut whatsoever. And so I had a lot of tests come back. I discovered that I had yeast overgrowth, which is called Candida. I'd never heard of it before, as most of you probably won't have done. But essentially everybody has something called yeast in their gut, so Candida. And essentially that can overgrow in certain situations, and it can cause systemic problems in certain people with chronic health problems. So that's kind of the route that I went down, and that was my first kind of step into this kind of world of the alternative way of treating things. And what I did was I embarked on a sugar and yeast-free diet, and obviously as a university student it was probably one of the hardest things to kind of to try, but I was so kind of determined to make changes because I couldn't live in the state that I was in. My health was in such a state of decline, and I'd never, you know, I was terrified that I was actually going to be feeling like that forever, and that the doctors kind of shrugged their shoulders and didn't really kind of understand what it was. And so I thought, well, I might as well try. I thought it was going to be a 6-week thing. It turned out to be way longer than that, and that's not to discourage anybody because everybody's different. Just for me, I wasn't really responding much. I had certain improvements, but in terms of my brain fog, which was a really severe kind of symptom, it wasn't really shifting. And you know, obviously that was really, really affecting me on a daily basis and in order to function. And it was quite hard as well because I was wanting to go out and drink and have a good time with my friends. And, you know, I don't feel like a lot of people understood it at the time. And especially because of the fact that, you know, when an illness is chronic and it's almost an invisible disease and people can't really see it, they almost don't understand it because, you know, you look well then, you know, how can you be on the inside feeling that terrible, which was the case for me. Not many people really understood what was kind of going on, and I did actually have a lot of relationship problems with my friends just because they didn't really kind of understand it. So but I just wanted to kind of spread awareness of that because, you know, hopefully that makes people think, you know, whatever anyone's going through, it's a personal thing, and, you know, it doesn't matter if you look well, you might not be like that on the inside. So but anyway, so I started on this sugar and yeast-free diet. You know, it was really hard to cut out alcohol for such a long period of time, and, you know, I wished more than ever that I could kind of go out with my friends and get drunk and just have a good time, but I was kind of still managing things, and just through that experience I've kind of come into a point where I'm really in tune with my body and how it feels, just because I've kind of changed my diet so much to kind of, you know, reduce those foods that are quite inflammatory for me and that don't sit right. So from the Candida and the yeast-free diet, obviously with my gut status I had issues with that. I had issues with parasites as well, which I had to take antifungals for, so things like wormwood, like cloves and things like that. I was supplementing like crazy, and then again from that I'd finished my degree, and I was really, really appreciative and happy that I was able to actually finish my degree in English. And that was when I moved down to London, and I had a summer where I kind of was stress-free, so I kind of felt a little bit better there. And then I moved down to London and I had a new job, and I was deciding to study nutrition, which I enrolled onto, and naturopathy. So I kind of thought at that point, you know, I'm good here, like, it's fine. I thought I was over it all, and I thought it was just kind of a blip, you know, and that had lasted almost, you know, 2 years from this point. So this was 2012 to 2014 when I moved down to London. And I started my job. I thought everything was kind of okay. I still had a few kind of niggles, but I thought it's all manageable, you know, there's nothing seriously wrong. And then again, something really strange started to happen, and it was my ear, which I was complaining with a few issues with in that summer, but it started to get so much worse. And I remember trying to get the underground, and the tube would kind of come past me, and it would be almost as though like it was pulling me over, because I had this like blockage in my left ear, and it was so inflamed, and it would feel like I had vertigo essentially, where I was just being pulled over. Things would knock me over. I was dizzy all the time, and again, that was a chronic thing. I'd have that daily, you know, for the next, I can't remember how long it was, maybe the next 8 to 10 months. It was a chronic thing, and the brain fog started to come back slightly, and again the tiredness, which was pretty much chronic, that was, you know, fluctuating throughout each day, and I was still managing to kind of do my job and get by, but, you know, still really struggling with that. And so with the vertigo, obviously I went to go see lots of doctors. I went to Harley Street, saw some ENTs, but again all the tests came back normal. So I suppose, what do you do in a situation where the doctors can't really solve your problems? And you do look to the alternative route, because it's hope, isn't it? You've not got another kind of outlet to go down. So whether there's this evidence base, and, you know, there is so much evidence going into these alternative modes of therapy, which is what I'm now learning a lot about, we've got to have hope. So for me, I kind of again went down the alternative route, and I looked at food autoimmune reactivity, and I've again had some intolerance testing, so some blood testing, which essentially looks at our IgE and our IgGs, which are antibodies, and how we respond and react to foods. So I came back responding to gluten proteins and dairy proteins mainly. Again, some really amazing foods I had to cut out my diet. So I'd gone down the kind of sugar yeast-free route, and now it was making more radical changes where I had to kind of look at, gluten and dairy, which essentially I've learned that the gluten and dairy, there's a link between how they can actually cause inflammation in the gut, and they can cause the tight junctions, which are the cells in between basically the cells that line our small and large intestine and our guts. It can make those porous, so essentially it can cause food proteins to leak out into the gut, so it's called a leaky gut. And that can essentially trigger an inflammatory response or an autoimmune response in certain situations and a lot of autoimmune diseases. So gluten and dairy foods can actually be quite problematic in those types of conditions, and as was the case with me in terms of the tests that I'd found, I was also reacting to. So again, without any kind of options to go down in the orthodox route, I just thought, right, I'm going to kind of make these changes. So I cut out gluten and I cut out dairy. Still gluten and dairy free to this day, and that has really, really helped me. Again, I've managed to get my diet down to a really, really kind of clean state, and it's not clean by the sense of the word that I'm not eating anything and I'm not nourishing myself, because I've learned the importance of food and healthy food and how it can be so delicious, and how it can be so important in terms of our health in general, and especially our digestive health. So doing that, I managed to kind of reverse the symptoms that were going on in my ear. I've not had any problems with that ever since, which has been amazing. So that took me again about 10 to 12 months to kind of rectify, again, because you're always trying to find the answers, and then you need to figure out what you're going to do, and then when you start to make those changes, it can take a little bit of time to kind of track that progress. And again, I've learnt so much from there, and I've learnt a lot in my studies as well. I've looked at things like heavy metals. So I've had a live blood analysis, which I went to a doctor in Spain. He essentially noticed that, again, I had heavy metals in my blood. Things like mercury, for example. I had parasites, obviously the dysbiosis, which is imbalance of your microflora levels in your gut. So all these kind of issues, they definitely relate back to your gut. But in terms of the heavy metals, that was something I was completely not aware about. And it was basically because my mum had 12 amalgam fillings when she was pregnant with me, and essentially they can kind of hold on to things that are going on systemically. So I did a mercury kind of detox there, and I was taking things like chlorella to kind of help to detoxify those and make sure my liver was working optimally. I've done liver flushes as well. And so many different things. I've also kind of tried to look at my lifestyle in terms of addressing things like stress, and just trying to get my cortisol levels down, because that can also play a role in some of my symptoms. And I've learnt so much along the way, and I don't want to kind of say it's a one-size-fits-all approach, because obviously I'm still on my journey, and it has been a really long kind of battle with my health, and I've learnt so much along the way. And I'm not saying any of this is right or wrong, I'm just saying that this is kind of my way of dealing with it, because I kind of didn't really have any other kind of options in terms of my ME. And it has, really helped me. It's completely changed my life. I'm now, a qualified nutritional therapist, and hopefully, from that experience, can do something good with it. And I just wanted to kind of end on a quote, which was basically that, in every obstacle, we should turn that into an opportunity. So I just think that's a really great quote. And if there's anybody out there that's kind of suffering with a similar chronic health problem, there's other people out there that are going through similar things. And, I don't want to say this is right or wrong, as I said before. I'm just saying there are other things you can do to really help control your health. And, there's a positive outcome of it at the end of the day. And, I'm starting to see that now. I'm starting a business with my sister, which is our brand ARDERE. So I just wanted to let everybody know that, I'm on the up. and I'm still learning along my way, so I'll keep you all updated with my progress, and that's it. Thank you.